Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is Friday, the 16th of September, 2022. And these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the day 2 of the SCO summit. The chiefs of the different, the heads of states council that is meeting. Our Prime Minister also addressed it. He also met with other important leaders from the different countries today. How important is the SCO? What are the different parameters under which the SCO functions? And how important is SCO for Pakistan in this day when Pakistan is engulfed with the effects of climate change in the form of floods and huge devastation? This is going to be our first segment, the SCO, the importance of SCO in the current geostrategic, geoeconomic and geopolitical scenario. The second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns, of course, the situation as far as the floods are concerned, the rehabilitation and relief activities that are going on across Pakistan, the help that is coming from different countries across the world, the organizations such as the United Nations and its different tributaries, and the losses that the NFRCC says might cross $40 billion US. And this is for the moment. We don't know what will happen in the next few days or in a week's or 10 days time when the floods, when the water would have receded from all the areas. Only then will we know the real estimate of the damage that has been caused by it. Nevertheless, loss of lives, loss of property and loss of livestock is also what has really damaged Pakistan's economy and the livelihoods of the people. This is going to be our second story. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the Auditor General of Pakistan, who has started an audit of the precious gifts received by the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The AGP office has tasked the Federal Audit Directorate to audit the gifts received by the former Prime Minister. What is the history as far as Toshakhana is concerned? And what does the Constitution say as far as such gifts that are received, and how should the government or the heads of government deal with this? Is going to be our third segment. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the SCO, our Prime Minister, who's there along with the Foreign Minister and other members of the cabinet, the meetings that have been held as far as the importance of SCO. More in the following report.
The 22nd Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit is being held in Samarkand against the backdrop of a geopolitical upheaval challenging the world order. The world is coming to Samarkand has been the theme of preparations for the annual meeting to be hosted by group's current chairman, Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arrived in Samarkand, Uzbekistan on a 2-day trip, and Uzbekistan Prime Minister Abdullah Aripov received Prime Minister Shehbaz upon his arrival at the airport. During his 2-day visit, Prime Minister held bilateral and delegation-level meetings with several world leaders. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had splendid interaction with several world leaders and received warm invitations of visit from China, Russia and other fraternal countries. While delivering his keynote address, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif recalled Pakistan's momentous counter-terrorism efforts and highlighted devastating impact of climate-induced flood disaster in Pakistan while expressing resolve to overcome this challenge. Reiterating Pakistan's commitment to Shanghai spirit, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif emphasized that global economic turbulence has necessitated the need for more cooperation amongst the SCO member countries. Originally envisioned as Shanghai 5, today SCO member states include more than 3.5 billion people, and the SCO over the past decade has cooperated in many fields, including counter-terrorism. The Samarkand conference is taking place at a very critical time in an atmosphere of fast-changing geopolitics, and a strong Eurasian alliance is not only imperative for economic cooperation but also for regional security.
Now, we discuss the importance of the SCO, Pakistan's contribution to the SCO, and the importance of the countries that are part of the SCO to align together to take care and, of course, deal with the geopolitical and geoeconomic situations that are prevalent in the region. We've been joined by Taimur Khan, is a research associate at the ISSI. Taimur, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank
Taimur,
you for having me.
The SCO. We talk about the Shanghai spirit, the spirit of the SCO. How important is that? And this is just a term, but is there a genuine base to this term?
Of course it is, because as you are aware that we are now living in a world that is slowly and gradually moving towards a unipolar world order to a multipolar world order. And in that, different power centers are emerging in different parts of the world, with Russia and China being the two main global powers that have emerged in the recent times, with one bloc being the US and its European Western partners. So SCO is very significant in that regard, because as the US and its European partners have come up with their own blocs, such as the G7 countries, the SCO is looked at the Eastern equivalent of the G7 economic bloc. And even the agenda initially when the SCO was being formed in June of 2001, it was decided that SCO, although was formed on those issues and agendas that were more important to its co-founders, Russia and China, such as the rise of religious extremism and terrorism, the ethnic violence that was erupting in the region. So initially their agendas were circling around those contemporary issues. But with, as the time progressed in both countries, especially China, when its economy expanded, they also increased the ambit and agenda of the SCO as well. And they included regional cooperation, energy cooperation, investment, trade, commercial activity. They have also been included into the agenda of the SCO.
Oh, then Taimur, tell me, to be very frank, why was our Prime Minister the only one talking about climate change and not the other heads of state? Is climate change only pertinent to Pakistan and not the other countries of the SCO, or is economy more important than climate change?
Well, you have to see that the environment, the global environment or the global strategic environment that has shaped up in ever since February 24, it has taken the spotlight from the impacts of climate change or the issues of climate change to a more strategic issues in nature, such as the Ukraine war, which has led to other strategic issues such as the disruption of global supply chains, the price hikes, the war returning to the European continent after so many decades. So the spotlight has once again shifted back to strategic issues. And I think that was actually what you were also seeing as a manifestation during this year's SCO summit as well. That is why our Prime Minister, sensing the gravity of the situation, especially when his own country, Pakistan, was suffering from devastating floods, which was actually an impact of climate change, despite being a country with the least percentage of carbon emissions, was being the largest victim of the impacts of climate change. That is why, while his country was in the thick of it, it was his priority to discuss and bring to the notice of other regional global major powers that this is what Pakistan is suffering through and why. And why was the question regarding the climate change. That is why it was very important.
Otherwise, I'd like to ask you, China, a very important partner, in fact, the backbone of the SCO. Pakistan met, our Premier met with Xi Jinping, had a very long and productive meeting, talked about different ambits. India did not meet with Xi Jinping at all. Narendra Modi, he was there, he didn't meet. And then, of course, we all saw the group picture that was taken, and Narendra Modi was on one corner and at a certain distance from all the others. What then remains of India's role if India is not willing to participate as a member of the SCO?
Well, you have to see that India is trying to project itself as a regional, or at least, if not a global, then a regional power. And it is manifesting its clout, especially in the region, by actually, it is all about optics. And as far as the optics are concerned, India is doing a very good job, at least telling it to their own electoral college, especially of that belongs to or that subscribes to Prime Minister Modi, that it is standing up to the powers to be, especially in the region. And it's recent, or you can say for the last 10 to 15 years, the closeness or the bonhomie that India has developed with the United States of America, I think there is a sense in India that it does not need region that much as the region needs India. That is why you see that India tries to pose itself that it is a power to be reckoned with. And the world needs to come to India and not the other way around. So that is what you were actually seeing being manifested by the Indian Prime Minister while he was at the summit.
All right. Also, another question concerning Russia. One of the points of commonalities as far as the SCO is concerned is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Vladimir Putin was there, our Prime Minister met with him. He also met with the Iranian president as well. Iran and Russia had a common statement after which they said that they are going to align together much more because of their common enmity with the United States of America. Are there new alliances that are being made under the ambit of the SCO?
Well, I think what you are seeing in the current summit of the SCO is the reinvigoration of the existing alliances that were already there in place. Such as Russia and Iran, they have always had a very strong relationship with each other, helping each other out because both the countries are US sanctioned. They have been facing economic sanctions, the Western imposed economic sanctions for long, and they have been helping each other out to avert or to dodge those sanctions and keep their economies afloat. China and Russia, ever since the Ukraine war and several years earlier than that, have also developed a very strong symbiotic relationship as far as their strategic relationship, their economic and political relationships are concerned. And I think that is majorly because of the US attitude towards both these countries, which have actually driven both of them close to each other. India, on the other hand, also has a very strong strategic and privileged partnership. Words of Vladimir Putin, they enjoy a very privileged and strategic relationship for the last 50 years. In December 2021, President Vladimir Putin visited India. That was his second visit that year after COVID. And it was a 2+2 ministerial meeting in which 28 MOUs were signed between India and Russia.
Despite the fact that India is a very close ally of the United States.
The United States. But you have to understand that India is also manifesting its concept or its policy of strategic autonomy, in which it has declared openly that it is not going to pick any sides, but it is going to maintain and balance its relations with all major global powers, be it the United States of America or Russia. And it has also made the other major global powers, because of its economic and political clout, that it has the capability or the capacity to do so. And I think that is why both the major powers, they are okay with India, as long as India is serving both their interests, and vice versa, India is also getting its own interests being served by maintaining relations.
We see a lot of
both.
foreign policy doctrines as far as the countries that form part of the SCO is concerned. We've got Pakistan's foreign policy that wants to remain neutral and have relationship with all the countries, whether it be the US or China or Russia or all the other countries, to have a common point of interest, and their common point of interest is economy. They want to have an export-based economy, and that is what the current government is also going towards. Russia has just announced a new foreign policy doctrine.
Yes.
India, as we've talked about, has a doctrine as well to also play a major role with all the major players across the world, whether it be Russia or the United States of America. We see China's policy as well under the BRI or its foreign policy as well. Can all of these policies work under the ambit of the SCO, or do you feel these are just subdivisions and then they all get together and work towards common goals?
Well, as far as their grand strategies are concerned, every country has its own specific agendas and strategic goals and objectives. There are opportunities, and because of those similarities and differences, there are opportunities as well as challenges. Now, it depends upon the leadership and the bureaucracies of those respective countries to manage those differences amicably and to capitalize on those opportunities. If I take the example of Iran and Russia, under the ambit of the SCO, since Iran is now a full-fledged member, although its membership is going to be fully...
Well, it's not for the moment a full-fledged member. It has submitted its...
no, it was submitted last year. It has been approved this year, and it is going to manifest or operationalize in April 2023.
So not yet.
Not yet, yes, exactly, not yet. But
just as Belarus.
China has endorsed it, Russia has endorsed it, and I think it is
also
as
Belarus is also...
Belarus has also applied this year, and it will be approved in the next year's summit that will happen in India, because India has now been given the presidency of the SCO Secretariat, and it will be organizing the 23rd Heads of State SCO meeting in New Delhi.
All right.
So as I was saying, that the partnership between Iran and Russia under the ambit of the SCO, both the countries are energy and resource rich countries, and both of them have very good relations with India. And India is an energy hungry country because it has industrialized, it has an export oriented economy, and it needs energy because it has a burgeoning population as well. So it has a huge market for energy. As you must be aware that ever since the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has been facing economic sanctions, particularly on its energy sources. So who or which countries actually filled those energy export gaps in Russian economy that were left by the European economies, China and India? India is now buying all the Ural oil from Russia on cheap prices, refining it in its own refineries, because Ural oil refineries require special equipment that only India has in the region.
All right.
And then India is exporting that oil back to the European economies, which actually tells about that interests rule at the end.
Of course.
So Iran, on the other hand, is another source of cheap energy for India. So under the ambit of SCO, if both Russia and Iran are competing for the Indian markets, because at the end it's all about economy, it's all about the dollars. And these are petrodollars or gas dollars. And I think India can afford that energy from both countries. So if both these countries target the Indian economy with the mindset of a zero-sum game, then it's a challenge.
What about Pakistan's sum game? Do you feel Pakistan has a stand as far as its relationship with the SCO countries is concerned? Do you feel Prime Minister at this SCO Council of Heads of State meeting has made an impact as far as Pakistan's stand on different issues is concerned, whether it be Afghanistan, whether it be climate change? Do you feel that the countries still are aligned towards the countries of the SCO, apart from India, of course, are aligned towards Pakistan's stance as prescribed by Shehbaz Sharif Sahab is concerned?
The front or the points that raised by our Prime Minister at the SCO summit, they were very good, at least on theory. But you have to see how will they get manifested or received by the other countries practically. Pakistan does talk a big talk, but the thing is you have to actually look at the balance that it can maintain between its will and its capacity.
All right.
Pakistan's capacity at this moment is not something which enables it to talk on the points that the other countries were talking about, especially with regards to investments, especially with regards to energy cooperation or supply chain management, so on and so forth. So Pakistan for the moment is only capable of discussing the tools of hard politics or high politics, such as war, terrorism, militancy. And I think as far as Pakistan is concerned, it should at least first capitalize on the strengths, the existing strengths that it has. Pakistan did raise the issue of militancy and terrorism emanating from Afghanistan and the unfreezing of financial assets of Afghanistan, and a collective effort by all the SCO and the other regional countries in order to maintain stability and peace inside of Afghanistan, so that if there is peace in Afghanistan, naturally that peace will translate and spill over and reflect into Pakistan as well. So he made a very strong point that Pakistan is not succeeding because it has other geopolitical constraints and issues that it is dealing with primarily.
But these geopolitical constraints or issues that you say Afghanistan is facing, of course Pakistan is facing the brunt of it as well through militancy, direct and indirectly through Afghanistan. But can the countries of the SCO resolve to do something about it, or do you feel this is an intentional maneuvering by some countries in the region?
They can. And they should, because as Afghanistan is right in the backyard of all the countries, regional SCO countries, especially China and Russia. Iran also gets impacted by what happens in Afghanistan. Pakistan primarily also gets affected, but Central Asian countries are the backyard of Russia. And if there is trouble in the Central Asian countries, then it will naturally spill over into the Russian mainland as well. So unless and until Russia and China, apart from that, the Xinjiang issue of the China, it also shares a border with Afghanistan. So the ETIM militants, they were being harbored inside of Afghanistan, although the number of those militants was very small.
But it's what China had already warned Afghanistan about more than once.
Exactly. So unless and until those major powers, especially Russia and China, they help Afghanistan to come out of all the troubles or assist it in some manner, or at least provide the economic assistance in order to sustain the interim government of the IEA in the country, which is also ensuring the peace and stability and also curbing the menace of terrorism, especially by the ISKP and other international terrorist organizations. The trouble is going to spill over into their restive areas as well. So China and Russia, it is not just a matter of geopolitics, but it is also a matter of their own peace and security as well. If they don't do anything about it, several or some years down the line, this trouble that is actually happening in Afghanistan right now, it is definitely going to make its way into their own inside their own borders as well.
That is so true. Finally, I'd like a short but concise answer to this. Impact of Pakistan's presence in the Council of Heads of State in this SCO, and what is going to be the short and long-term impact of it as far as our relationship with other countries within the ambit of the SCO is concerned?
Well, Pakistan's presence at this year's summit actually reiterates that Pakistan is also a very strong geopolitical power in the region. If not internationally, but at least in the region, it is still relevant. It is integral that Pakistan's survival, Pakistan's peace and stability, and Pakistan's progress is necessary for the regional cohesion and the overall regional progress. So Pakistan being present over there and meeting with, and our Prime Minister's meeting with the rest of the heads of state except for India, reiterates that Pakistan wants amicable relations with all regional countries. It is all up for the regional cohesion and regional cooperation. And I think in future, if because the points that were put across by all the heads of state during this summit they were very positive,
All right.
they were very sustainable, and they were very pragmatic and doable. And they were also, extended with a concern, a genuine concern and a political will to actually do something about all the contemporary issues that were being discussed during the summit. So I think in future, if they actually have the political will, the right political will, and if they make a collective effort, I think it is going to have a very positive impact on our region.
All right, let's stay optimistic as far as the SCO is concerned. Let's hope that this forum becomes much better, because SARC has lost its efficiency because of India's involvement or non-involvement for that matter. Let's hope that India does not try to jeopardize this one, because next year it's going to be in India. Thank you very much, Taimur, to have joined us and to have given us such a varied outlook of what the SCO represents and how Pakistan can benefit from it as far as its relationship with other countries, and of course this current situation that Pakistan is embroiled is concerned. Thank you very much, Taimur, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the floods in Pakistan. The floods, of course, that have impacted Pakistan. 33 million plus people who have been impacted by it. The latest estimates say that Pakistan needs around $40 billion in order to come out of the current state of affairs that it is embroiled in. 1/3 of the country is underwater, and of course the number of casualties have come. The disease is prevalent, different diseases, waterborne diseases like diarrhea, like malaria, cholera, dengue, and so on and so forth. There are reproductive issues that women have had who are pregnant, who are with child, and are of course giving birth under very tedious circumstances. And well, to talk about that and more, we've been joined by Ahmed Rafay, environmental lawyer. Rafay, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Rafay, the estimates are increasing as far as the relief or rehabilitation efforts are concerned, of around $40 billion. This is what the latest estimates by the NFRCC say, and the flood death toll crosses 1,500 as far as the NDMA is concerned. Are these figures going to increase with time?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Look, this is a tragedy of epic proportions. It's an event that's still carrying on. There was rain in Karachi yesterday. We're not through the monsoons yet. The floods are caused by rain, so we have to wait for the season to come to an end before we get a proper sense of just the beginning of the extent of damage. Because once the floods are gone, we are now beginning, as you just mentioned, to see beyond the immediate physical destruction that the floods cause on infrastructure. We're beginning to see the human impact of climate change, the health impact, the fact that people don't have access to healthcare, to hospitals. In many cases, pregnant women, as you mentioned, don't have maternal care. Soon-to-be born children won't have postnatal care. And indeed, many children around Pakistan won't have schools to go to next week when the academic calendar starts again, because the schools have gone. And so this immense infrastructure loss is going to be assessed in the coming days. And I've also seen the figure of about $40 billion. I saw it earlier today. And likely that will go up. It's a staggering amount already. Last week when we spoke, the figure was close to $10 to $12 billion, and it's spiked 4 times since then. It'll probably plateau off in the next month or so. But what this immense damage is going to cause is an economic strain on the country, which is already suffering from the repercussions of being in an IMF program. We are already in an austerity program because we have to repay these loans that we've taken, which gives the government very limited room to maneuver so that it can invest in these reconstruction initiatives rather than paying off our loans.
Rafay, you talk of maneuvering under the current situation or circumstances. Can international organizations, there has been some talk in some quarters for debt relief as far as Pakistan is concerned. Do you feel that is a possibility? Do you feel international organizations like the IMF, the World Bank can think in those terms, will think in those terms?
I do know that the reparations argument has been going on in the last week or 10 days, where people have been saying that Pakistan's responsibility towards global and historical greenhouse gas emissions is negligible. And yet the fate its people are paying right now is really due to the greenhouse gases produced by the economies of the global north over the past 150 years. So this argument is going, and it's gaining traction, not just in Pakistan, but in other global south countries that are also suffering from climate change. And this was one of the big differences in the types of debates that ensued the 2010 floods. I think now, 12 years later, a lot of activism, a lot of research, economic research, historical research has been able to better, scientifically, better equip us with what is known as attributability. So just today, I was reading some research that was published in the New York Times that stated that the rains caused by the monsoon this year are 70% likely because of the fact that we are 1.1, 1.2 degrees centigrade warmer on account of global warming than we were before the Industrial Revolution. Now, when science like this becomes more and more accurate, when you can start attributing specific climate events to global climate change, then the argument for reparations will get stronger. Right now, it's a growing argument stemming out of Pakistan. I hope it will connect with a network of other global South countries facing a similar situation, so that this is exactly the argument that needs to be taken by countries like Pakistan when they go to the United Nations later this month. It'll be Climate Week in the United Nations. So, and the COP meeting will be a month later in Egypt, the Conference of Parties of the Nations Framework Convention. This is the time Pakistan needs to lobby other developing countries to form a bloc that can make a persuasive argument to the international community. Now, I just want to end by saying I'm not entirely pessimistic. I do know reparations is a very tall order. No developed country is going to admit its own liability in such a manner.
If you remember well, there was a comment by our Premier some time back in which he was talking of donor fatigue. You remember that, I hope. So are the donors also fatigued to some extent as far as aid or help to countries such as Pakistan is concerned?
It's not just, well, donor fatigue, there certainly is. But we are also expecting in the next year or so for climate events in the global north to cause sufficient disruptions that, forget donor fatigue, their own resources will be so stretched so as not to make possible the sort of grants and foreign funding they make available to the global south. I mean, take, for example, Germany and France. Because of the heat waves of this year, the waterways of Europe have dried up. The Danube is no longer fit for navigation. You can't move fuel up and down the Danube. Similarly, in France, which is heavily dependent on nuclear energy, the water temperatures in its rivers have risen so much on account of the heat wave that they can't effectively cool the nuclear stations, leading France to now start spot purchasing of LNG for its upcoming winter. Now that means Pakistan will face competitors like Germany and France in LPG bidding coming up in this winter. And now we're beginning to see the connection between an inevitable energy crisis in Pakistan during this winter caused by the heat wave in Europe this summer.
All right. Now, Rafay, in this whole thing, we've also seen our Premier talking about more reliance toward clean energy like solar energy and wind energy. I think this is something that is going to work in the long term in Pakistan as well. This said, under the current circumstances, what should be the manner of rehabilitation, reconstruction after floods in Pakistan, given the fact that Pakistan might not have the resources that it is asking for to properly rehabilitate and reconstruct in its country?
Well, Madam, I'm a lawyer, so you're asking me really an economic question. But what I do see is an absolute necessity moving forward is a reset in our priorities. The Pakistani economy is, from what little I can understand of it, heavily favors local elites. And so there are subsidies granted at a very large level. For example, the sugar industry, the textile industry, the construction industry, they all get certain subsidies. Even us common people get a subsidy in fuel, even though automobiles are within the reach of only a few percentage of people in Pakistan. I think a reset is necessary. There are over 200 million people in this country. A full third of them are underwater. This is a staggering tragedy, which requires Pakistanis to reassess their priorities so that a lot of this money that goes to these elites, to elite capture, can be taken from there and spread more evenly amongst Pakistanis in a more sustainable way, in a way that doesn't necessarily fight with the environment or challenge nature. We need to have green, sustainable, resilient infrastructure that benefits people, not industry, moving forward.
Speaking of climate change and, of course, the country moving forward under the current circumstances that it is embroiled in, what do you foresee as far as Pakistan and climate change are concerned? More floods, more earthquakes, more calamities? What is your prediction for the next year or so?
Well, I keep on reminding people that this is the coolest summer of the rest of our lives. It's only going to get hotter from here because there's so many greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that the United Nations and other scientists working for it have told us that we're probably going to breach 1.5 degrees of warming by the end of this decade. What we're going to see in Pakistan, therefore, as we've seen just this year, the floods are not the only climate event. You know, if one-third of the country is underwater today, 2 months ago, the entire country was lacking water and was in the middle of a heat wave. What we are going to see going forward are climate extremes happening to us every single year. We're going to have air pollution in the winters. We're going to have early heat waves and extended summers, which will also include extremely heavy and unexpected and unprecedented monsoon rains. And you know, also in parts of Sindh, we're beginning to see a heat wave again on account of wet bulb temperatures. This is when at even 35 degrees centigrade, because it's so humid, the human body can't perspire, making it very dangerous to be outdoors. So it's interventions that protects its population from the extremities of climate is where our state needs to invest in its disaster management initiatives.
And finally, Rafay, do you feel Pakistan is in a position or could be in a position in the coming weeks to withstand the effects of climate change and to undergo the right measures in order to alleviate the current situation that one-third of Pakistan is currently engulfed in, more than 33 million. I think the number is going to increase in the next weeks or so. But do you feel Pakistan can do it on its own?
You know, 12 years ago when the 2010 floods hit, and that was also, if you recall, during the middle of the war on terror when Pakistan was experiencing terror attacks as well. Pakistanis were resilient, we survived, we got back on our feet, we prayed to Allah, dusted off our shoulders and went back to work. This again today is a tragedy of epic proportions. And you know, donor fatigue notwithstanding, Pakistanis are incredibly resilient. But climate change is not something a single country can tackle. Pakistan and Pakistanis must network and leverage their capacity so that the rest of the world can be convinced to cut down their greenhouse gas emissions so that we have some hope of keeping global temperatures stable.
All right, thank you very much, Ahmed Rafay Alam, to have joined us, environmental lawyer, talking to us about the impacts of climate change, talking to us about the way forward, how Pakistan needs to maneuver in order to alleviate the crisis that it is engulfed in which so many people, millions and millions of people have been affected, livestock has been affected, crops have been affected, and of course Pakistan economy has also been impacted to a huge extent. Now the only way to move forward is a collective resolve wherein all the political parties, all the organizations, all the people, from the civil sector, from the public sector, from the private sector, come together as one to work together to take Pakistan out of the current situation of crisis that it is engulfed in. It is not difficult if we come as one. Only if those elements that are trying to create differences can think positively and think for Pakistan for once and move forward in the right direction, can our country really come out of this crisis. But at the moment, as we see things, Pakistan is really undergoing a lot of pressure. Our current government is undergoing a lot of pressure for no fault of its own because of these floods as a result of climate change. And as we've also discussed in the past and today as well, for no fault of Pakistan, because Pakistan does not emit as much of carbon as the other countries in the West do. But the problem is that the countries in the West, although they are culpable as far as climate change is concerned, are themselves embroiled in their issues, and that is why they or maybe do not want to help countries such as Pakistan as much as they would like to. So let's see how Pakistan maneuvers regionally, internationally, and how it does in order to alleviate its people from the effects of climate change. We are there for Pakistan. We will always be there for Pakistan. Let's come to our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns something that we've been hearing a lot in the news, and that is Toshakhana. Now, what is Toshakhana? What is the whole background of it, the historical background? What does the constitution say as far as Toshakhana is, and what is the concept of it for a lot of laymen who don't understand all of it but read a lot of tweets and then formulate their own point of view? We've been joined by Saddam Hussein, who's an economist and comes regularly to our show. Saddam, pleasure to have you, not in the studios but nevertheless in person, indirectly. Saddam, what is the whole historical perspective as far as this concept of Toshakhana is concerned?
Thank you very much, Umar. Toshakhana, loosely translated in English as a state repository, is a place where whenever Prime Minister, ministers, and any state official goes outside the country and receives some gifts, due to his position or authority, he then comes back and then places those gifts in the state repository, which is called Toshakhana. So they are placed there, they are the state property, and these gifts are then, after the approval of the cabinet, open for auction. And but the problem is that the first right to purchase those gifts is the receivers, those state officials who have received the gift. First right of purchase rests with them. So this, technically, as an economist, I see it as an inherent problem, because with the gift an official receives is due to his position or authority. So it is the state position or state authority that has been conferred upon him. So he should not technically have the first right to purchase, and it should be an open auction for all.
All right. Saddam, also, what are the laws, or what part of our constitution talks about how heads of institutions, organizations, or countries need to tackle Toshakhana gifts?
Constitutions and rules and regulation, as far as concerned, say that the gift up to the price of equivalent to 10,000, they can keep it for the free, and from 10,000 to 4 lakh, they have to pay a token money, which is usually the 15% of the gift, the value of the gift. So they can give the 15% of the value, and they can keep the gifts. Above 4 lakh and above, those gifts are only the minister and the president can purchase. No, the state official can have the gifts valuing 4 lakh and above. So the government is coming with up a new policy for the Toshakhana. I guess they would look at the technicalities, because giving only the 15% of the total value is somewhat which we call in economics as a rent seeking. It's mean misuse of your authority or a position, because you're an official, and that's why you can give only 15%. But a common man, he will give the auction money when there's a bidding, an open bidding. But the receivers can only give 15%. So this creates ambiguity. You can keep the gifts and you have to pay the money. So technically, the receiver said that I have paid the money according to the rule. But how much money? So according to the rule, they are right, but rules of the game should be changed. If we see in the history, it's not the first time that an investigation being opened up against a former prime minister. Many former prime ministers have been engaged in this kind of investigations. The problem is not that they have taken the gifts from the state repository. The problem is that the parliamentarians, the ministers, and the prime minister have to declare their assets at the end of the year to the plan and to the election commission. So the investigations is actually to decode that they have not declared their assets and the gifts that they have taken from the state repository. So as far as getting the gifts after giving a token money is concerned, they are fine by the rule, though there is the problem in the rule itself. But the investigations are generally because they have not declared it with the ECP.
All right, I think that's something that needs to be made more transparent. How important, in your point of view, is it for our leaders, our heads of government, or former or current prime ministers and presidents, and all those who are in power, to be more transparent as far as the mechanisms of receiving gifts is concerned? I know that the current prime minister has not taken any of the gifts, has submitted those gifts that he received. But nevertheless, shouldn't be there proper mechanism? And as you said, there is going to be some kind of a law that is going to be put into place, or changes in the laws made. Shouldn't those laws be made public, be made more transparent, so that the common man understands what the whole concept of Toshakhana is all about?
Exactly, Umar. This is the point. There was an applicant who tried to get the information through the Information Act, free information for all. He asked about the gifts within the state repository, and he was not allowed. I don't remember his name. There was a case. So there is a secrecy rule that you cannot disclose what is in the state repository, what a prime minister receives as a gift from the other state leaders and the dignitaries. So that secrecy, triggered the whole demand for reform. That why is that gifts being kept a secret? So you are right, I agree with you, and there's an indication that this rule will be changed, and this particular amendment will be brought up, that the gifts our officials and the parliamentarians receive will be on display on a website, that who gets what and what is the actual money of the gift. This will also help in the bidding of the auction, because when there's a transparent mechanism and everything is on the website and the actual value is on the website, so everybody would be in a good position for bid in auction. So this would bring in more transparency to the whole process of the gifts in the state repository.
And of course, Saddam, any citizen of countries such as ours wants to have a leader that is more transparent as far as the way he maneuvers, the way he buys or receives, or of course transactions as far as the gifts or any other material is concerned. And the more a leader is transparent in it, the more we have confidence in that leader, and the more he is ambiguous in the way he deals with this, the more we are also ambiguous in our trust in him. And a lot of times the trust gets diluted because of mechanisms such as these. Toshakhana or other mechanism, don't you also feel, I mean, this is my last question to you, Saddam, that under the current circumstances, political or otherwise, that in order for a stable political system to survive in Pakistan, that the whole ambit of policy around politics needs to be as transparent as possible, so that persons like me and you can just go to a website or ask for inquiries, whether it be Toshakhana, whether it be other aspects, and we be provided with details that are as per the requirements and as per the things that happen, so that we understand where things are going. We are nevertheless taxpayers, aren't we?
Exactly. I again agree with you. The problem is that historically what we have been facing, that with the change of the government, new governments comes in, and they have the right to implement their own vision and manifesto, but there's a retrospective effect of law. So they come and they just see the law and they change what they think is right. So I guess, as you said, for a more transparent, there should be an inclusivity factor. So the government and the officials should not change the rules and amend it. They should involve all the stakeholders, international experts, local experts, and what has been the best practices around the globe. So after the inputs of all, there should be a comprehensive framework or a policy. Otherwise, if I think what is right, I change it, and the next prime minister will come, he will change it according to his thinking.
There should be a continuity. That's what you're trying to say as far as the transparency in policy is concerned. Thank you very much, Saddam Hussein, economist, who have joined us, who have talked to us about Toshakhana. This is a very is a contentious, controversial topic because of the former prime minister and the allegations that are on him. As per our current prime minister, who said that Imran Khan has taken gifts worth 140 million from Toshakhana and sold them in Dubai. A lot of questions are there, a lot of questions that need to be answered by the proper authorities in the proper methods. And as Saddam has said, the laws need to be formulated that make the whole mechanism more and more transparent, so that we can trust or not trust an individual who is or either a current prime minister or a former prime minister. That is how politics move forward. That is what politics is all about. For the moment, the Auditor General of Pakistan has started an audit of these gifts that were received by the former prime minister, and has tasked the Federal Audit Directorate to audit the gifts received by him, and this is under the direction of the Public Accounts Committee. As far as this organization is concerned, Toshakhana is a department which was established in 1974 under the administrative control of the Cabinet Division, and stores precious gifts given to rulers, parliamentarians, bureaucrats and officials by heads of other governments and states and foreign dignitaries. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. This is Friday, so we'll see you inshallah on Monday. But by Monday, being citizens of Pakistan, please help those who are in need, those who have been affected by the floods directly, indirectly, through the government, through the armed forces, through the NGOs, or through those people who are working diligently to help those in need. Allah Hafiz.